Why do so many men over 60 still masturbate, but feel more alone, tired, and disconnected than ever before? Not because they're oversexed, not because they're addicted, but because in a life that's grown quiet, it's the only moment they still feel alive. For some, it's a nighttime routine. For others, it's a secret no one knows, not even their spouse. But behind the closed doors of retirement homes, empty bedrooms, and late-night living rooms, something quiet yet powerful is happening. A habit most men don't talk about is quietly shaping their physical health, their emotional well-being, and even their sense of manhood. My name is Dr. James Porter. I've spent the last 30 years working with men from age 35 to 95. I've sat across from veterans, pastors, retired CEOs, and grandfathers, all asking the same question: why do I still do it if I don't even enjoy it anymore? What I discovered changed the way I treat aging men forever. Because the truth is, masturbation after 60 isn't just about sex. It's a mirror, a message, a sign, and if you've never been taught how to read it, you might be ignoring one of the most important signals your body is sending you. In the next few minutes, I'll reveal 4 science-backed truths that thousands of men told me they wished they had known decades ago. These secrets aren't about guilt or control or shame, but about reclaiming energy, intimacy, and dignity, one honest step at a time. And the last secret, it's the one that saved marriages, restored erections, and helped men in their 70s say, I didn't think I'd ever feel like myself again, but now I do. So if you're over 60 and ready to stop feeling invisible, this might be the most important video you watch all year. I'm not here to sell you shame. I'm here to offer you something most men over 60 never get. The full truth, spoken out loud without judgment. My name is Dr. James Porter. I'm a board-certified specialist in men's health and sexual aging. For the past 30 years, I've worked in clinics, hospital wings, and private offices across the country, sitting down with men from every walk of life. Teachers, soldiers, widowers, husbands afraid to touch their wives, men who look strong on the outside but carry quiet questions no one ever taught them how to ask. Doc, is it weird that I still do it? Why do I feel emptier afterwards? Is this normal? I've heard these questions hundreds of times, and every time I saw something behind their eyes that hit me hard. A deep need to feel seen, heard, and still worthy. You see, most of us were raised to believe that a real man figures things out alone. We weren't taught how to talk about pleasure, let alone pain. So we end up carrying our confusion in silence. Until one day, it starts to show up in our bodies as fatigue, disconnection, or a slow fading of our inner spark. That's why I created this video. Not to fix you, but to walk with you. To share the patterns I've seen from thousands of aging men. To give you the words, insights, and small daily tools that have helped others reignite energy, restore connection, and feel like themselves again. Because it's not too late. It never was. And now that we've opened this door together, let's take the next step. Let's look at the first truth no one ever told us. The one quietly written into every man's private life, but almost never spoken out loud. Let's begin where most men get it completely wrong. Not because they're weak, but because no one ever told them otherwise. It's not about how often you do it, it's about why. In my years of practice, I've sat across from thousands of older men in their 60s, 70s, even late 80s, and I can't count how many times I've heard a familiar line, usually whispered with a nervous smile. Doc, I still do it sometimes. That's not weird, is it? They expect me to laugh or judge. But I don't. Instead, I lean in and ask a question that stops the conversation cold. Tell me, why do you do it? At first, there's silence. Then a shrug. To help me sleep? To deal with stress? Habit, I guess, or sometimes, and this is the one that always stings, to feel something, anything. Over time, I started seeing the same pattern in man after man. This wasn't about desire or lust. This was about survival. Masturbation for many men had become the only time in the day where they felt present, awake, real. And that realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I remember one patient, Robert, 72, a widower, retired military, quiet, proud. He said to me, "I don't do it because I'm horny. I do it because that's the only time I remember I'm still here." That word, still here, stuck with me because behind it was a lifetime of emotional silence. You see, most men were never taught how to name their emotions. We learn to push through, to tough it out. And when you never learn to process what you're feeling, stress, grief, boredom, loneliness, those emotions don't disappear, they just get rerouted. For many men, they get rerouted through their hands. Masturbation becomes a kind of emotional outlet, a ritual of reconnection, not to pleasure, but to presence. But here's the truth most never hear. If your body is seeking release, but your heart is starving for connection, no climax will ever truly satisfy. And when masturbation is driven by emotional emptiness, it can become compulsive. Not because you're addicted to sex, but because you're craving comfort in the only form you know how to reach for. The worst part? It doesn't look dangerous. There's no hangover, no bruises, no obvious crash, but the real damage is invisible. It's the slow erosion of joy, of motivation, of that quiet pride you used to carry in your chest. This is why the first truth matters so much. Masturbation is not just a sexual act, it's a message from your inner life. If you feel numb after doing it, if you do it just to pass time or because sleep won't come, if it feels more like a chore than a choice, then your body might be telling you something much deeper. So what do? You pause. You ask a new question. What do I really need right now? Is it comfort, touch, expression, intimacy? When older men start to approach this part of themselves with curiosity, not urgency, with compassion, not guilt, that's when the healing begins. And that healing isn't just physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual. Because when you stop hiding, when you start listening, your body becomes your ally again. Robert, the widower I told you about, after a few months of journaling, talking, reconnecting with his adult son, he came back to my office smiling. "Doc," he said, "I still do it now and then, but it doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels like me again." That's the moment I knew this first truth, if understood deeply, can change the entire way a man sees himself. So if you've ever wondered, why do I still do this? Maybe it's not because something's wrong with you. Maybe it's because your body and your heart have been waiting for you to finally pay attention. And that attention might just be the beginning of everything you've been missing. Now that we've explored the emotional side of masturbation, let's look at the physical. Specifically, one small gland with a very big job, your prostate. Most men don't think much about it until something goes wrong, like struggling to start a stream, waking up 5 times a night to pee, or feeling a dull ache they can't quite explain. But by the time those symptoms show up, Your prostate has already been trying to get your attention for years. You see, your prostate is more than just a gland. It's a scorekeeper, and it remembers everything: how often you ejaculate, how long you go without, whether your habits are balanced or extreme. And just like any finely tuned machine, too much or too little stress over time causes wear, friction, and breakdown. I once had a patient, Harold, 68, retired truck driver. Tough guy, no nonsense. He came in after noticing blood in his urine and discomfort during climax. He feared the worst, prostate cancer. We ran all the tests. Thankfully, it wasn't cancer, but his prostate was badly inflamed. When I asked about his habits, he admitted, "Doc, I went nearly 10 years without doing anything, then started up again, trying to get it back." He wasn't reckless, he was misinformed. His body didn't need intensity, it needed rhythm. Your prostate thrives on consistency, not chaos. Regular, moderate ejaculation, around 2 to 4 times per week, has been shown to reduce inflammation, flush toxins, and even lower the risk of prostate cancer in some studies. But too much can cause irritation. Too little creates stagnation. What matters is flow, balance, mindful engagement. No one ever tells young men this. They grow up thinking it doesn't matter. And by the time they hit their 60s or 70s, the consequences start to show, and they have no idea why. That's why I call this the prostate tax. Because if you ignore this part of yourself for too long, you pay for it later. In discomfort, in fear, in shame. But the good news? It's not too late. Even in your 60s, 70s, and beyond, you can begin to shift how you treat this part of your body. Start small. Start simple. Ask, am I giving my body regular, respectful care, or forcing it into silence and then expecting sudden performance? The men I've seen improve the most aren't the ones who chase some perfect number. They're the ones who start paying attention. They begin to see masturbation not as a guilty pleasure or a meaningless habit, but as a signal, a way to support their health, maintain function, and stay connected with their body in a natural, life-affirming way. Harold? 3 months later, he came back to my office. He'd started tracking his habits, making time for gentle exercise, taking care of his hydration. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't inflamed anymore. More importantly, he said something I'll never forget. "Doc, I didn't realize how much I'd been ignoring myself, not just my body, but the part of me that still wanted to feel good. I thought that was gone, but it's not." So here's the truth I wish every man heard by age 40, but it still matters now. Your prostate isn't your enemy, it's your barometer. It doesn't punish, it warns. And when you learn to listen, it rewards you with something priceless: comfort, clarity, and confidence. Now, let's move forward, because even with a healthy prostate, many men still feel something slipping. It's not pain and it's not fear, but a quiet sense that they're not quite who they used to be. The next truth is about something no one ever told you to train, but you should have. Let's talk about your pelvic floor. Even when the prostate is healthy, many men still feel something slipping. They can't always explain it. A softer erection, a dull climax, a little dribble after they pee. Not painful, just unsettling. And more than that, they don't feel like themselves anymore. That brings us to the third truth, a truth most men were never taught, and one that could quietly be stealing your strength: your pelvic floor. Now, if you've never heard of it, you're not alone. When I first started in medicine, even I didn't talk about it. It was considered a women's health topic, something for childbirth recovery or incontinence ads. But after 3 decades in men's health, I can say this without hesitation. The pelvic floor is one of the biggest blind spots in male aging, and it's costing older men far more than they realize. Your pelvic floor is a group of muscles located at the base of your torso. They support your bladder, bowel, and sexual organs. They help you start and stop urination. They play a role in erections, ejaculation, and orgasm. In short, they're the hidden core of your manhood, and like any other muscle, if you don't train them, they weaken. Slowly, quietly, until one day you start noticing things you can't quite name. I don't feel as strong. I leak a little when I laugh. My climax doesn't feel like it used to. That's exactly what happened to Leonard, 74, retired engineer. He wasn't in pain. He wasn't even that worried. He just came in and said, "Doc, I don't feel like myself anymore." His testosterone was normal. His heart was strong. But after a quick test, the culprit was clear. His pelvic floor muscles were barely functioning. Years of sitting, stress, and never knowing these muscles existed had taken their toll. And what hurt most wasn't the physical decline, it was the emotional one. The quiet loss of confidence, of control, of identity. But here's the good news. It's not too late. With just a few minutes of focus each day, older men can regain function, sensation, and strength. Often within weeks. No surgery, no pills, just a simple, powerful exercise. Clench the muscles you'd use to stop yourself from urinating. Hold for 5 seconds. Breathe. Relax. Repeat 10 times. Do it twice a day. We call them Kegels, and while they're often recommended for women, they can be life-changing for men. Leonard started doing them every day, and 6 months later, he came back with a smile I'll never forget. "Doc, I didn't think I'd ever feel that again, but I did, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm back in my body, not just existing in it." So if you've noticed changes down there in sensation, control, or confidence, don't write it off as just aging. It's not too late to rebuild. It's not too late to feel like yourself again. And that spark you thought was gone, it's waiting for you in muscles you didn't even know you had. Now, as powerful as that is, there's still one more truth we need to talk about. And this one isn't physical. It's deeper, more human, and it might just be the most important secret of all. We've talked about your emotions, we've talked about your prostate, we've talked about your pelvic floor, but none of that will truly matter if we don't talk about this next truth. Because it's not your hormones or your habits that are quietly eroding your connection. It's shame. And for many older men, this is the real disease. The one that hides in silence, spreads through isolation, and steals the most precious part of being human, the ability to be close, to be vulnerable, to be seen. Most of us were never taught how to speak about our bodies, especially not about pleasure. We were told sex was private, masturbation was dirty, desire was dangerous. So we stayed quiet, even when we hurt, even when we didn't understand ourselves, even when we were too afraid to ask for help. That silence becomes a habit, and over time, it becomes shame. I'll never forget Walter. He was 69 years old, married for 45. He came into my office, not for a prescription, but for something much harder to diagnose. "I still masturbate, Doc," he said quietly. "Not because I don't love my wife, but because I'm scared of what she'd think. I've been hiding this for decades." He wasn't cheating, he wasn't hurting anyone, he was just ashamed. Ashamed for needing something that was completely normal. And in that shame, he began to pull away from his wife, from himself, from his own sense of worth. That broke me. Because Walter's story isn't rare. I've heard it hundreds of times, in different versions. Men who stopped initiating touch, men who avoided eye contact during sex, men who thought they were broken, disgusting, or weak, all because their bodies still had needs they didn't know how to talk about. Shame isolates. It builds walls between you and your partner, but even more painfully, it builds walls between you and yourself. And yet, here's the miracle. Shame only survives in silence. The moment you speak it, name it, it begins to lose its grip. Walter eventually did something incredibly brave. He told his wife, not with blame or drama, but with honesty. He said, "I need you to know this part of me. I've been scared to share it, but I want to feel close again." He expected rejection, but instead she leaned in. They talked for hours about their desires, their fears, their distance. And for the first time in years, they held each other without shame standing between them. Weeks later, he told me, "I thought it would break us, but it saved us. Not because I stopped masturbating, but because I stopped hiding." That's the lesson I wish every man knew. Masturbation isn't the enemy, secrets are. It's not the act that hurts you, it's the silence wrapped around it. And here's the deeper truth. When you stop hiding, when you start treating your needs with honesty and your body with respect, you reclaim something you may have forgotten was even yours. Dignity. The dignity to be who you are, to feel what you feel, to reach for connection without fear or apology. I've watched this shift happen in real time. Men walk into my office closed off, shoulders hunched, eyes tired, and weeks later, they sit taller, they laugh more, they begin to speak about their bodies, not with shame, but with curiosity and even pride, because when the shame lifts, something else comes back. Life. Now that you know these 4 truths, the real question is, what will you do with them? Because knowing is just the beginning. The next step is living differently, with care, attention, and yes, with love. So now you know. 4 truths that most men never hear until it's too late. Masturbation is a mirror of your emotions. Your prostate remembers everything. Your pelvic floor is quietly shaping your strength, and shame, more than anything, is what truly weakens intimacy. These weren't warnings, they were invitations to stop surviving and start connecting, to stop hiding and start healing, to stop carrying the weight of silence and finally feel light again. You see, no one gave us a manual for how to be men as we aged. No one told us that our bodies would change, that our desires would evolve, or that our emotional lives would become louder, not quieter, with time. But now you know. And because you know, you can begin again. You can begin listening to your body with compassion. You can begin treating your needs with respect, not guilt. You can begin having the conversations you were once too afraid to start. And in doing so, you reclaim more than just your sexuality. You reclaim your dignity, your aliveness, your power to choose how this next chapter of your life will feel. If this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of something you've long buried, or if it made you realize you're not as alone as you thought, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Send it to a friend, or simply comment below with these 2 words. I'm ready. Because this isn't the end of your manhood. For many of us, it's just the beginning.